This is our third officials training module ahead of the National Flag Football Championships. This one will focus on the timing rules. So let's talk about some general timing rules. First, we play 4 quarters. Each of those quarters is 12 minutes in length. Halftime is 5 minutes. It's important that we start the halftime clock as soon as the referee indicates the end of the second quarter. So as soon as that happens, back judge, go ahead and start your watch to time halftime. Remember that the clock will run continuously for the first 22 minutes for each half unless it's stopped for one of the following 3 reasons. Anytime a team takes a charged team timeout, and that could occur at any point in the game, in that case the game clock would then restart on the subsequent snap. If we ever have to take an official's timeout for any reason, be that an injury to a player or an official, or for any extended delay for any reason, maybe a weather delay or something like that, in that case the game clock will start when the referee blows the subsequent ready for play. Blow the ready for play and wind the game clock. And then at the end of any period, first period and third period, the game clock will restart on the snap to start the second and fourth quarter. Additionally, the first and third quarter clocks will also start on the snap. Remember that each team receives 3 timeouts per half. Those timeouts are each 60 seconds in length. Back judge should be timing those timeouts. As soon as we get to 55 seconds, we need a quick warning whistle. And then the referee has 5 to 10 seconds to blow the ready for play in following those timeouts. So you note from the previous slide that we're kind of just cruising through the whole first and third quarter and most of the second and fourth quarter. But when we get into the last 2 minutes of each half, the last 2 minutes of the second and fourth quarter, that's when our new timing rules go into effect, and it's really more of a standard football clock. We will take a 2-minute warning in the second and fourth quarters. That could happen because the ball is dead and we reach 2 minutes, or it would occur at the first dead ball under 2 minutes if the ball happened to be live at the 2-minute mark. And it is important to note that after the 2-minute warning, the timing rules change. And what that means is that sometimes situations will stop the clock during that period of time that may cause it to start on the snap or on the ready for play. So whereas we were not necessarily stopping the clock for all of these things we're about to talk about outside of 2 minutes, under 2 minutes we will, and understanding what those situations are will dictate when we start the clock again, whether that's on the ready for play or the snap. So because this works for me, I've grouped those situations I mentioned on the previous slide into major and minor clock stoppers. Major clock stoppers for me means that the clock stops after the play and won't restart until the next subsequent snap. Those major clock stoppers under 2 minutes include the 2-minute warning itself, an incomplete legal or illegal forward pass, a play that ends out of bounds, a safety, a team timeout, which was always a major clock stopper regardless of the time in the game that it occurred, a touchdown, noting that the try is an untimed down that follows a touchdown, so the clock would not start again until the snap that follows the try, a touchback, anytime we award B a new series, anytime we award a new series to either team following a legal punt, or anytime a team attempts to consume time illegally. If one or more of these things occurs during a down under 2 minutes, we know we will stop the clock and we will not restart it until after the next snap, with the touchdown being the obvious exception. It is important to note here, however, specifically as it relates to the items relating to new series to B or to either team following a legal punt, that there is the potential that a penalty may mean we are not actually awarding a new series to either team following a legal punt or to B. And in that case, the major clock stopper component goes away. Now, that doesn't mean that there might be complicated by an additional item here. So let me give you a play example. It is 2nd down and 40 to gain from the Team A 35-yard line. Team A throws an interception, but B is guilty of defensive pass interference. B returns the ball inbounds and is deflagged inbounds. All right, we stopped the clock, but ultimately we didn't stop the clock to award a new series. We only stopped it because of penalty enforcement, which we'll talk about here in a minute. So if A accepts the penalty for defensive pass interference, what is ultimately happening is we are not awarding B a new series. We are in fact awarding A new series because of the penalty, and the play ended in bounds. This would not cause the clock to start on the snap, but rather would start on the ready for play. However, if B were to run this play out of bounds or intercepted in the end zone and downed it for a touchback, those are both major clock stopper situations, and those would cause the clock not to restart until the subsequent snap. So it's important to understand that there are scenarios which may reverse the major clock stopper situations and just to have an understanding of what is possible here. So for me, the opposite of major is minor. So I've categorized these others as minor clock stoppers, and these are situations that will cause the clock to start on the ready for play or at the referee's discretion. And I've noted that here in the diagrams. So first, a first down, primarily a first down for Team A, is dependent upon the previous play. If Team A gains the line to gain and is deflagged in bounds, then the only reason we stop the clock under 2 minutes is for the first down, and the clock would then start on the ready for play. If, however, Team A were to gain a first down and carry the ball out of bounds, then we know that out of bounds, play ending out of bounds, is a major clock stopper, and the game clock would not start until the subsequent snap. Note that penalty and its administration is also dependent upon the previous play, with the exception that an accepted delay of game foul will always cause the clock to start on the snap under 2 minutes. So we mentioned previously the play I mentioned for defensive pass interference. Let's say we had defensive pass interference, but A caught the pass anyway and then was deflagged in bounds. If that were the case, the administration of the penalty may result in declination of that penalty by A, but that would require us to start the clock on the ready for play. By contrast, that pass were caught and carried out of bounds and the penalty were declined, or even if the penalty were accepted. In that case, the play ended out of bounds, and as a result, the clock would start on the subsequent snap. Note that when the referee takes a timeout, the clock could be restarted at the referee's discretion. We talked about a new series to A that is entirely dependent upon the previous play, which I mentioned previously. Teams that consume time illegally will cause the clock to start on the ready for play. A great example of conserving time illegally could be potentially an intentional grounding for the purposes of stopping the clock. We're late in the game, team rolls, they know that if they get deflagged in bounds, time could expire on them, or the clock could at least run down, and so they throw the ball into an area not occupied by an eligible receiver for the purposes of both not losing yardage and also to keep the clock and time out. That could be a situation where the referee invokes this, attempting to conserve time, and thus starts the clock on the ready for play. And then an inadvertent whistle. If we blow an inadvertent whistle and the teams elect replay of the down, we will start the clock on the ready for play. If the teams elect to take the result of the play and A is still in possession, we will, of course, start the clock on the ready for play. But if teams elect the result of the play and B or R is in possession, in that case, the clock would start on the subsequent snap, because we would be awarding a new series to either B or R in those cases. So again, it's important to understand the differences between the major and minor clock stoppers as it relates to when we should put the game clock back in action. Some additional timing rules here. Please note that a situation that causes the clock to restart on the snap will always take priority over other timing rules. And you can see from the example here, Team A gains a first down, which causes the clock, is a minor clock stopper and is situational, but also runs out of bounds, which we know is a major clock stopper and causes the clock to restart on the subsequent snap. That means that the clock will start on the snap. That's why, for me, I've called them major and minor. Major means we will defer to it if it occurs, so in that case, the clock would start on the snap. Additionally, note that if there is a timing error at any point in the game, the referee can correct an obvious timing error, provided it's discovered prior to the second live ball following the error. Note also that this window closes at the end of the period once we have acknowledged that the period is officially over. So even though we may not have had a live ball that follows that error, if we screw up and we then declare that the period is over, we can't go back and correct it. So it's imperative, referees, at the end of quarters, that we check to ensure that we have no potential for timing errors before we go ahead and declare that the period has in fact ended. There are some specific timing implications for fouls in the last 2 minutes of the game. Specifically, when a foul occurs under the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter, the offended team has the option to start the game clock on the snap when it would otherwise have started on the ready, provided they accept the penalty. If the penalty is declined, they do not have the option to start the game clock on the snap. So here's an example. Team A catches a forward pass, is deflagged in bounds, but during the pass, we have defensive pass interference by B. If A declines the penalty, the game clock will start on the ready for play. If A accepts the penalty A also has the option to then start the game clock on the subsequent snap. You need to provide both of those bits of information to the referee at that time when we're getting penalty enforcement decisions from the captain. It's important to note that this does not apply in the other direction. If the clock would have started on the snap, there's no circumstances under which A could elect on an accepted penalty to start on the ready for play. And please note that if the result of the play causes the game clock to start on the snap, this option is not applicable because the game clock will start on the snap in any case. So now let's deal with extension of periods. It's important to note that a period is extended if, during a down in which time expires, one of the following things occurs. The first is there was an accepted penalty for a live ball foul. So if we have an accepted penalty for a live ball foul during a down in which time expires, we will extend the period. There are a couple of exceptions here. The first is if that foul is an unsportsmanlike or a non-player foul. Those fouls might occur while the ball is live, but they are never considered live ball fouls, so those penalties will not extend the period. Additionally, if a loss of down foul occurs, the period will not be extended, nor will the penalty be extended for fouls for which enforcement results in a safety. Keep in mind, if any of those things occur, we will, even if time expired during the down, we will not extend the period. Important to note that in the first and third quarters, time may run out during enforcement of the penalty, but unless the clock ran to zeros during the down in which the foul occurred and time expired, we will not further extend the period. It's entirely possible that we may have a foul against A or B that occurs on the last play of the quarter, but the play ends at 20 seconds and we enforce the penalty, and before we can snap the ball again, time expires. In those cases, we will not extend the period further. We will move into the second and fourth periods. That's only applicable in the case in which time runs out during that play. Important to note also that if a scoring play occurs on the last time down of the period, but a loss of down foul also occurred during the last time down of the period, specifically at the end of the half, more so than the end of the quarter, the loss of down foul means both that we will not further extend the period, nor will the score count. Loss of down in that case will cancel the score. We will extend the period if there was a double foul during a down in which time expires, or if there was an inadvertent whistle during a down in which time expires. If a touchdown was scored during the last time down of a period, we will extend the period for the try. Important to note that even in the first and third quarters, if we have a touchdown and then prior to us snapping the ball on the try, time expires, we will extend the period for that try. The time does not have to expire during the down in which the touchdown occurred in order for us to run the try. We will attempt the try unless the touchdown is scored in the last play of the fourth period and the points would not affect the outcome of the game or playoff qualifying. It's important to note that in pool play, unless the mercy rule is triggered by that touchdown, we will extend the period for the try because that does factor into playoff qualifying. However, once we reach bracket play, if the team that scored the touchdown is leading, we will not extend the period for the try because the game has been decided. We don't care about point differential at that point. Additionally, if the team that scored the touchdown is down by 4 or more points, we will not extend the period for the try because they couldn't possibly win the game. So please keep that in mind. In pool play, we will attempt the try unless the mercy rule is in effect. Once it's bracket play, we need to adhere to that procedure that I mentioned previously. Additionally, the period is not extended if the defense fouls during a successful try and the offended team accepts the results of the play with enforcement of the penalty from the succeeding spot. So if we've extended the second quarter because we had a touchdown during the last time down of the period, and then on the try, which is successful, we have a foul for roughing the passer, we will not give B the ball after enforcement to run one play in the second period. That roughing the passer penalty will carry over to the first play of the third period. Please note also that if any of those situations occur during the untimed down, we will extend the period again for another untimed down. And we will do this until we get a down free of accepted live ball fouls that don't fall into any of our exception categories. So keep those things in mind when we're dealing with extension of period. Please note that we also are adhering to a 25-second play clock for flag football. That is to encourage the ball being put in play promptly and legally. and any action that delay that or prevent it, we would call it delay a game. Examples of that include, again, failure to snap within 25 seconds following the ready for play, putting the ball in play before it is declared ready for play. This is a tactic that some teams use when they are less than 5 yards beyond the line to gain and won a new series after having obtained a first down. So this is important, why we ask teams about penalty enforcement in many cases. Also, deliberately advancing a dead ball. I would be careful about this. We're talking about situations in which that was done for the sole purpose of keeping a running clock out of the hands of their opponents and further delaying the game. And then please note that teams are permitted to request a coach-referee conference if they want to discuss a ruling, what they perceive as an error in officials' ruling, even after they're out of timeouts. And if they are incorrect in that conference and the ruling does not change, they would be charged to delay a game. Delay a game in this case is a 5-yard penalty that is always enforced at the succeeding spot. This concludes our module on the timing rules. I hope you took something away from this, and I wish you well in the upcoming tournament.